Hello, I'm the Renegade Gamer. Today we're going to discuss one of the most controversial Final Fantasies out there. Final Fantasy 13. A game hated by many and loved by many. Where do I stand in this mix? With 13, it's a mixed bag for me. There are things in the game I like and things in the game I don't. I'm just going to get a few things out of the way, okay? The linearity of the game really doesn't bother me that much. I like exploration in RPGs. I do. Having a game that's focused mainly on the storyline doesn't really bother me. The fact that they removed towns, all the shops were at the save points, no NPCs really. That didn't really bug me either. There are other aspects of this game that does bother me. Where are my cigarettes? Hold up. So yeah, that didn't bother me at all. What bugged me was other aspects of the game. So I've looked into a lot of development on this game. There are reasons this game is basically linear. There was a lot of problems when they were developing the game. I mean, it had a development cycle of about 4 years, and even the director himself, Toyamada, I think so his name's pronounced, stated that the game really could have used another 2 years to really work it out. But there was a lot of development problems in the background. Originally it was designed for the PS2. They changed over once the Final Fantasy VII demo came out. They thought it looked so amazing and everything. They decided to change everything over to the PS3, which basically meant they had to start from scratch again. But the ideal was when the Final Fantasy VII Advent Children came out, they wanted to make a game that basically was seamless, where you felt like you were doing all the combat and everything like in the movie. So that's why they really focused on this. Now, anybody who's played Final Fantasy 13 knows for a fact that it's not actually like that because it's still turn-based. But I mean, that was their original intent. So we had a lot of development problems that started from the beginning. Some other interesting aspects of this game is that the voice work, localization team, they had a lot of problems with getting the voice work right. And Square also has this kind of generalized rule they don't want to use previous voice actors for Final Fantasies that often. It doesn't mean they won't, it's just not game after game. They don't want to use the same voice actors, which kind of makes a lot of sense. My hair is all over the place. So yeah, the main character from Final Fantasy 12, I don't remember her name, it's Kathy something, who voiced Ash. She submitted a audition for Lightning, and Square turned her down because she'd already been in a Final Fantasy game. They wanted a whole new voice cast. So. They also decided to go with a couple Australian actresses, because they wanted to have Vanille and Fang to have a more outer world kind of speaking, which is why they sound so strange within the rest of the context of the game. And it does make a certain degree of sense. I mean, they are from Pulse, and the rest of the characters are on Cocoon, so having a different dialect is not that way off. But yeah, most of the game complaints that I've heard, and also one other thing, Square was well aware before they released the game, when they were doing a lot of the things, they were well aware of a lot of the complaints that were in the game, about the game, but they were so far along that basically they couldn't fix it by that time. That's why Final Fantasy 13 Part 2 basically addresses all the complaints of the first game, which I'll get to later. I'm currently playing through that one. For the first time, technically the second time I didn't finish it, but 13. So I just want to get some development information out of the way, so you kind of understand where it's coming from here. Now, honestly, the area. Let's talk about the battle system of Final Fantasy 13. The battle system is universally kind of praised by most people. A lot of people like the battle system of 13. You know, it's fast, it's fluid, the animations look great. The common complaint I hear is because the auto command. You hit auto, you know, basically that's all you do. You know, or change paragraphs. That I understand those complaints. I do, and I admit freely that I much prefer to have control over my characters and their actions. But 13 does a good job most of the time when it does these things. There are a lot of other aspects in the 13 systems. You can cancel your moves in the middle of the bar. You can stagger an enemy. You can basically juggle them in the air and slice them to death with the commando, which is kind of fun. You know, status effects are a big deal in the game. You get hit with them, or if you get enemies with them. Always a big deal with using saboteurs or synergists. So there are a lot of things that are actually pretty well done within the battle systems. So I don't really have an issue with that. The battle system I like. It's not my favorite Final Fantasy battle system, but it's a battle system I at least like, okay? I don't have a lot of complaints on. I mean, like I said, I would prefer to have more control on my characters. I also would prefer not to die. Get a game over if the lead character dies, which I think was a big flaw in the game, which they fixed in the second one. But yeah. So, minigames. This game doesn't really have minigames. You have, essentially, kind of like hunts. You run across these old Lasif things laying on the ground. You take one, you go out, you kill something, you come back, you get a reward. And eventually you do get chocobos. But there's really no minigames in the game. Not really. Which is weird because you go to a chocobo theme park and there's no minigames, and it's just strange that they would have included that, but whatever. So no minigames whatsoever in the game, pretty much. The only side content is basically that. You go do this. Also, the super optional is basically Longui, I think it's his name. And, you know, it's the big giant dinosaur-looking creature. So, those areas, even though it's kind of disappointing that there's not a lot of side things to do outside of combat, I still have fun with 13, though. What I don't have fun doing, though, is where I think one of the game's biggest flaws is weapon customization. Now, this may seem like a very petty complaint on my part. I admit that. But with me, weapon customization has always been a big thing, ever since Parasite Eve. Squaresoft did the weapon customization in Parasite Eve very well. And I've seen them do it again. Final Fantasy X had really good customization that you can do with weapons and armor. My biggest issue here with the weapon customization in 13 is that it's not explained real well. You kind of bumbled through your way through it. You can kind of figure it out. Basically, go creature comforts in the menu. Purchase roughly about 10 to 20 items. About 10 of about 20 of 10 items. Then go to I think it's Leonard's Garage. Purchase a bunch of perfect conductors. Apply the creature comfort ones first to get your experience up to 3. And then apply all the perfect conductors and hope to God you get it either maxed out or really, really high levels. But that wasn't the only issue I had here. They also added transformers into the a transform thing into it, and I could hardly ever figure out what weapon, what transformer. I had no clue. Not only that, you have such a variety of weapons you get throughout the game, it's kind of hard to figure out which ones to level up and which ones to just kind of bypass or sell. I would have preferred a little bit more of a. I know a lot of people don't like them, but I would have preferred more of a tutorial on the customization. Maybe a couple more tool tips about what this weapon could possibly turn into. Something of that sort. Instead of, it was just aggravating to work with. Also, money is kind of an issue in this game. The drop rate ratio of the enemies is really low. Now, Final Fantasy has been having this issue for quite some time. Final Fantasy 12, we had a drop issue. We had a drop rate. You get drops from the enemies. You sell the stuff that you get from the enemies, and you get money. Okay? 15. Basically, the only way to get money in that game was to either pick up a bunch of items you saw laying on the ground, or kill enemies and go turn in hunts, or whatever items you got from the enemy. You never got money from the enemies themselves. I can get behind that. That's not a problem. All right, but when your drop rate is low and you hardly ever get what you need, in this case, credit chips, perfume. Premium chips, I think was the other one. It made the game really grindy when you were trying to get cash to try to build up your weapons. So yeah, I had an issue here with that. Not so much that enemies don't drop. Not so much that enemies don't drop gold. Or gil. That doesn't bother me. I just wish the drop rate was a little better, okay? And I realize that it's tied to the 5-star thing, but even then, it's not 100%. And unfortunately, that's something that is still the case in the sequel. Although, I do seem to get more drops on a more regular basis in the sequel, whatever. Some other aspects that I think that they screwed up on. Having the Crystallium closed off to the player at certain parts. Basically, you can only go so far with the Crystallium. I don't think it was a good idea. There are players out there that really like to level their characters up, get whatever they want, and go, I mean, if you're going to tailor, if you have 6 roles, and basically you can tailor your character to what you want, right? That's what it kind of seems like, but that's not really the case. You really can't do that until about the end game, and even then, it's really limited. I get what they were trying to do here, but I think the closing off of the Crystallium at certain points throughout the game really wasn't that great of an idea. However, on the other side, closing off the Crystallium did make the player have to use strategy a lot more. So I'm of two minds of it. I don't really like it. But at the same time, it does encourage you to experiment with roles and different paragrams. So, hey, it's kind of there. I'm not a huge fan of it, but at least they did something with it, I guess. So the other thing we have the 6 roles. We have Commando, Ravager, Sentinel, Synergist, Saboteur, and Medic. I really didn't use Saboteur or Synergist that often until I got near the end game. Most of the game I usually use just Commando, Sentinel, Ravager, and Medic. But I do have to admit that even though the progressive system that they have here isn't exactly the best in the world, the mix and matching everything, I really did like. I liked having a couple of Sentinels and a Ravager, or diversity with Medic, Ravager, and Commando. I think that's what that amounted to. Or Relentless Assault with 2 Ravagers and a Sentinel. There was a lot of combinations that were a lot of fun to play around with, and just to see what happened when you did that. And of course, when I finally did start touching with the Saboteurs and the Sentinel and the Synergist, I found a lot more stuff you could do there too. So cool, I like that. I wish it would have been open a little earlier, and you could have really tailored your characters how you want. Because near the end of the game, when I was playing it, I basically had Fang as my highest hitter. I basically went through all the roles looking for anything with strength and HP and ignored magic whenever I could. Lightning, I kind of went both routes. She was my second high hitter, and also decent at magic. And then Vanille was my magic hitter. I boosted up the magic as much as possible, and ignored the strength whenever I could. Whenever you didn't have to go off on the side routes on the Crystallian. So yeah, that was mine. That was how I did it. And of course, you also can stack stuff with your accessories and all that stuff. Okay, no big deal. Of course, the part of the game that everybody has an issue with is the story. I both like and dislike this story. Let me explain. The story Final Fantasy XIII wants to tell is actually a fairly simple story when you boil it down. Take out all the l'Cie stuff, the fal'Cie, the focus stuff, rip it all out. That's just trimmings, okay? If you boil it down, basically it's about people that are trying to defy their fate. That's it. It's a very simplistic story. The problem with the game is the presentation of the story. A lot of things are left out of the main presentation. They're in the game within the data log. To get an understanding of how this world works, you're required basically to read the data log. If you don't read the data log, you don't have a freaking clue what's going on half the time. Case in point, I played this game up to Grand Pulse area. I really did not understand what the fuck was going on a lot. I got that they were fugitives. I got a lot of that stuff. Basically, when I got to Grand Pulse, I stopped the game, went, read the data logs, and then reread the data logs, and then reread the data logs, and I started the whole thing over. That way I had a more clear and precise idea of what was going on, what the background was, what the characters were doing. And you should not have to play a game like that. Because I was trying to read the data logs as I was playing, but I'd always have like 3 or 4 different new things threw at me at once that it was hard to keep up with for me. I just think this was a major flaw within the game itself. I think they should have incorporated that lore that's in the data logs a little bit better into the story, and they didn't. So that's probably my biggest issue with the way that they present their story, is just that to have any knowledge of it, you had to basically read a document, it's about the size of the Bible. But it is interesting. I like a lot of data lore, the data log. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in it. There's also some other problems too. Some of the data logs seems to contradict what's going on in the story with the characters. It says that like Lightning is trying to help Hope do this and whatever. But whenever you watch the scene, it looks more like she doesn't give a shit. So there is some contradictions, it feels like, within it. But like I said, this is by and far Final Fantasy XIII's biggest issue is the story, the presentation. But I still do enjoy it, even if it does end with a Deus Ex Machina, which I'll get to later. But I don't know. There was a lot of stuff here that could have been done a lot better. But what we got here, it was really soap opera-y in some areas. But I mean, it could have been done better. But I mean, it wasn't awful. I mean, I really didn't think it was that awful. I mean, I know a lot of people say it's cringeworthy and annoying in some areas, and I agree that it is annoying in some areas. But there are parts of the game that I think are presented quite well. The idea was starting the game and basically having two characters running around with each other for quite some time was not a bad idea. Having Lightning and Hope run around with each other, learning more about those two characters. Having Zaz and Vanille run around with each other, learning about those characters. Snow being a freaking moron, staying there and meeting Fang. You did learn more things about the characters throughout the journey doing that. When they finally all combined and then all the stories kind of collide with each other. But there's also some character development within this game. A lot of people bypass that. They just see that Snow's an idiot, Lightning's a bitch, Zaz is a coward, Hope is an annoying twat, Vanille is a moaning, I don't know, just moaning. But, I mean, they're not. There is development there. It's just that the way the game presents the story and what it's trying to do with the characters is not the best in the world, but if you sit back and you look at it, there is a lot of development there. Zaz does overcome his cowardice. Lightning stops being a bitch at a certain point and starts warming up to the rest of the party. And he becomes kind of a decent person. Snow is an idiot throughout the entirety of the game, but learns that, yes, I'm an idiot, I have a good heart, and I'm still going to try to do something instead of, whining. There is development there. It may not be the best one in the world, but there is some. I have to admit freely that the one character in the game that annoyed me the most, if I'm being fairly honest here, 5 of the 6 characters did not bother me at all. Only one did, and that was Hope. I wanted to kill Hope. I wanted to strangle that little bastard for about the first 15 hours of the game. Once the side part ended, he got better, and I was able to stomach him a lot more. But yeah, the first 15 hours, I wanted to fucking strangle that motherfucker. I was like, just do it! Just do it! Quit whining about it! Do it, motherfucker! But, Snow's an idiot. It's not the first game I played with an idiot as one of the main characters. Lightning's a bitch. Yeah, it's not the first game I played with a bitch as a main character. I'm just saying that, there is development here, and the characters are not as terrible as a lot of people like to say they are. If you still think they are, that's fine. That's your opinion. For me, they're fine. However, Barthandelus. The villain of this game, Barthandelus. I gotta be honest about this here. Barthandelus is probably the most boring villain I've ever came across in Final Fantasy. And that's saying a lot, considering Final Fantasy, the first one, has Chaos, who barely has any screen time. Every time Barthandelus was on the screen, I was like, okay, yeah, I got it. Please leave. There's only one sequence in the entire game I found him mildly entertaining, and this one he's posing as Sarah for Snow. I'm sitting there, it's like, yeah, that's kind of funny. But other than that, I found him just boring. I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. You wanted to fight your fate. Alright, fine. Please leave. I didn't like Barthandelus. I'm sorry. I did not care for the character. Did not care for the villain. It's one of the worst. Probably one of the weakest villains I've ever seen in a Final Fantasy. As far as just the character in general. I'm not talking about power-wise in general. Just a very weak antagonist. So let's talk about the music of this game. Music is psychotic. The only song in this game that I really feel that applies to is the very opening song, the one that when you first load the game up and it plays. It has this really military type beat to it, and it works really well. And then it gets to the second half of the game, which is more whimsical. or the second half of the song is whimsical, and then I was sitting there, I was like, that's a stark contrast to what this first part of the song is. It just doesn't really work together. That being said, most of the music in this game I like. I think it's pretty good. I like the battle song. I like a lot of the boss music. A lot of the singing J-pop songs that they play within the game itself. They're okay. They don't bother me. This Arch Deadlights, I think is what it's called. It's a good song. A lot of decent music in it. I think it was made by Hanato. I think it's the guy's name, or Hamato. Anyway. Unfortunately, this composer also left the company after the game was made, so, yeah. By the way, there was a few Square employees that left the company after the game was made. They had some issues here. Battle designer, the composer, a couple other people I can't recall right off the top of my head. One of them was a director, not the director, just I think it was a battle director or something. So the music was. I do like the music. Just a couple of songs that are just. Why? I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? So the final dungeon. Let's talk about some of the final dungeon here. Basically, you get off the racetrack, you run through the city, and you enter another kind of dimension with the foul sea that's got zooming stuff all over the place. Kind of looks like the inside of a computer. In a way, I don't know. But I did like the final dungeon. I thought the ideal of being able to transport back to previous areas, being Grand Pulse and the racetrack, to basically level up was a good ideal. And then the final dungeon itself was fairly challenging to get through. You'd fight a boss, and then that boss would basically become a regular enemy, and usually mounted up with another boss that was an enemy. And it was kind of a challenge to get through that area. I got a few game overs just, I just got a few game overs in that area. So I kind of like the final dungeon. I don't know if it's the best design I've ever seen. I wouldn't say that, but I still liked it. I thought it was fun. And then we get to the final boss. First part of the final boss, which is Barthandelus, which was a joke. And then we fight Orphan, who I died to about 11 times in a row. And the only problem I had with the Orphan fight was that he has one attack that's an instant death. I could handle all the rest of his attacks. The big Doom attack he'd hit you with was not really an issue. The status effects he'd hit you with, I could counteract that. The instant death attack, I actually had to reload the game from an earlier save just so I could go buy some stuff that counteracted that, or would prevent that. I had to go buy some stuff. I had to go buy some cherub crowns, boost up the power, put them all in my main character, Lightning in this case, so I could survive that fight. And of course, I beat the fight, and then the second fight with it was a joke, which is nothing really unusual in Final Fantasy. But the final fight was fairly difficult, but once you figured out that basically all you needed was something to counteract the instant death spell, the fight was no longer an issue. Still, I have to give him credit because it did require me to have to think a little bit outside the box. I just couldn't go in there. I had to actually go in there and prep for it. And then we get to the ending. Oh god. So throughout the game, the ideal is that your focus is to become Ragnarok and destroy Orphan and release all the foul sea. Okay. And then we get to the ending. Fang turns into Ragnarok, fights Orphan, loses, and then the l'Cie turn back into human, I think. It's kind of all over the place. And then, of course, Fang and Vanille merge into, I guess it's Ragnarok again, plunge into a volcano, create this crystallized thing that stops Cocoon from falling. Which in turn also makes because they completed their focus in becoming Ragnarok and destroying Orphan, it completed their focus, which caused everybody that had the brand to crystallize, and then the Deus Ex Machina scene is that they uncrystallize. So, yeah, okay. I was just kind of like, sure. Alright, yeah. And then you get a nice song, and the end. And it wasn't a great ending. I was just kind of sitting there. I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. I guess maybe it's just because I've gotten older these days. If an ending doesn't really affect me, I'm just like, you know. So I couldn't really muster up any courage to get angry about it. I couldn't muster up any courage or any feelings to get, upset or anything like that. I was just like, it's an ending. It's Deus Ex Machina. Whatever. But I guess it may be because I'm not as invested in it as possible. Overall, I think that Final Fantasy 13 did hit some sweet spots and did make a lot of misses. The game is really a loving or hating game. Some of your fans out there are going to absolutely love this game. Some of the fans out there absolutely hate this game, and I can understand both reasons. I've seen people say it's gutter trash, and I've seen people say it's the best Final Fantasy in the series. For me, it's not the best, not the worst. It's somewhere in the middle of the list. Probably on the lower side, but it's a game I still like, and I will play again at some point. But I'm not giving the scores anymore. I'm not bothering. I'm just going to say that I did like Final Fantasy 13, and I say give it a whirl. If you've never played Final Fantasy 13, give it a whirl. Or if you have played Final Fantasy 13, give it a second try. I mean, just look at it at a different point of view. Think of it as not a Final Fantasy. You get that out of the way, yeah, you might like the game. You might hate the game. I mean, you don't know. But as for other things I got coming up here on this channel, I am currently playing through Final Fantasy 13-2, Tales of Vesperia, which I'm having to put on hold for a moment because my truck's broke down and I'm not sure if I can get the PS4 to load up in the truck I'm in without blowing fuses. I might do a few movie reviews here, depending on what I can find. And if any big news comes up that I think is relevant, I'll, of course, cover it on the channel. Just a quick note, if you're new to my channel, I talk mostly about RPGs. There are some other games out up there I'll talk about, but RPGs is mostly what I talk about, and it's usually the Japanese type, so if you're expecting Destiny to be talked about on the channel, it's not going to happen. I don't play Destiny. But yeah, so anyway, I've been rambling for a long time, so I'm just going to go ahead and end this. I'm Renegade Gamer. You take it easy, and I'll catch you in the next episode.